Palworld has many different PAL options that all specialize in different work abilities. That means choosing the right PAL for the job with the right passives can really boost your base's production. So today we're going to take a look at each category and which PALs we feel are the best fit for them, depending on whether you're in the early, mid, or late game. All work ability tiers we mentioned are the base tiers, not the upgraded tier stats that you get from condensing your PAL to a 5-star PAL. This information was taken from a combination of in-game sources and from palpedia.net. We'll be starting off with the woodcutting category. The best pals for early game woodcutting would be Liftmonk, Tansy, Icthirdir, and Dinosum. Specifically, Icthirdir and Dinosum can carry you into the mid game until you can capture the Bushi Alpha around level 20. Late game, you'll want to get the Bushi because they are small and tie with the Warsect for the highest woodcutting ability at 3. Warsect, though, because of its bigger size, is the second best recommended woodcutting PAL because although the pathing has been upgraded, sometimes bigger PALs still get stuck in your base. However, as a bonus, Menacing and Blazehowl Knock are honorable mentions because while they only have the tier 2 woodcutting ability, they are the dark subtype and will work day and night as long as they are fed, as opposed to non-dark types who only work during the day and sleep at night like Bushi or Warsect. The next category we're going to go over is mining. Your best early game miner is going to be Depresso. You could go with a Cativa until you catch Depresso, but because of the dark subtyping, again, it'll allow it to work day and night, whereas Cativa will only work during the day. But once you reach the mid game, you'll want to upgrade to Tombats for the same nocturnal working reasons as Depresso, but also you have a choice between Dicnois and Anubis beyond Tombat. Anubis is going to be your mining PAL upgrade you'll want to switch to as soon as possible generally because it's very easy to breed it once you unlock the breeding pin, but also because it has the tier 3 mining ability. Dictois can come in pretty easily, relatively simply, if you only capturing stuff instead of breeding it, compared to Anubis, which you can only capture as an in-game alpha PAL. However, it really needs to be your active mining pet as opposed to your passive pet, but some people will disagree with me, and again, you have the option between all three of them. But those will only last you to roughly the mid to early late game. In the extreme late game, you'll want to switch out to Astegons eventually, since Astegons have the tier 4 mining skill naturally, and they will also work overnight, unlike Dictos and Anubis. Coming up next are the transports. Recommended early game transports would be Celeray, Depresso, Daydream, and Lespunk. By mid game, you'll want to switch to Calamari and Catris though, and again, there's some debate for this category whether you need to upgrade beyond things like Catris or Calamari. In my over 400 hours of Palworld, I've used both of them as my primary transport since I played earlier in the game's life, and they didn't get stuck like a lot of the bigger tier 3 and tier 4 transporting PALs tried. With the upgrades though to the PAL base pathing specifically, technically Wumpo and Wumpo Baton would be the best late game transports if you were going off the stats alone, since they have the tier 4 transporting. But I personally believe Hell Zephyr or Van Worm would be the best despite it being a tier 3 transport, because if you wanted to upgrade beyond Catris and Calamari, you still want things to be nocturnal, and Hell Zephyr and Van Worm are nocturnal, fast, and fly. However, you will have to take the chance that even with the upgrades, they will get stuck and periodically have to be reset. Up next though are the Kindling PALs. Early game, Foxsparks and Rubies would be your only options that could be caught with any consistency. However, by mid game you should be upgrading to Bushi, Incineram, Blazehowl, or Pyron Noct. Bushi and Blazehowl will have higher natural kindling ability but sleep at night, while Pyron Noct and Incineram will work overnight but have lower natural kindling ability. Late game, however, you'll be looking at using either Jormuntide Ignis or Blazehowl Noct. Both of these even out after a certain amount of time, however, Jormuntide Ignis will beat Blazehowl Noct if you need things done super fast in a short amount of time. Planter PALs are up next. In the early stages of the game, Liftmonk, Tansy, and Dinosum are definitive options to use to start building up your produce farms, though Gumoss can be used in a pinch. Mid-game, Petelia, Broncherry, and Verdash are all relatively easy to find and provide a nice boost to your planting speeds, while late-game, Lylene is your number one choice with no other contender. The next section will be about gathering. Having dedicated gatherer PALs may seem a little wasteful, but if you're interested, in the early game, Liftmonks, Tansies, and Daydrums are good options to harvest your crops, while mid-game, Calamari, Petelia, and Verdash are all very good options to upgrade to, with Verdash technically being tied for the second best gatherer. For late game, you can probably leave most light and medium farming to your Lylenes despite only having Gatherer Tier 2, but technically speaking, Frostallion Noct is the best with Gatherer Tier 4, while Verdash plus Jetragon tie with Gatherer Tier 3 for the second best. Up next, we're going to get Splishy Splashy with the watering skill. This is going to be probably one of the shortest sections because it's pretty definitive. Early game, you can't go wrong using Celery, Pingullet, or Fuak to power your hydro needs. Mid game though, you'll be looking to upgrade to Azarobe, Broncherry Aqua, Surfent, or Gobthin. While late game, nothing can touch Dormantide as the best watering pal. Moving on to the Handiwork pals. Handiwork is something, especially in the early game, where you just kind of get pals that are mainly for other things, but also have Handiwork as a secondary skill like Daedrum, Depresso, or Cativa. But by mid game, you should have found the Catris Alpha Boss and captured it a few times. This will allow you to use Catris as a primarily transport pal most of the time, but still have her craft things for you when you need to, or there isn't anything to transport. Passive Catris in your base combined with a fully maxed out condensed active summoned Anubis worker can basically handle all of your Handiwork needs. But if you prefer to have some dedicated passive base pals for it, or want to upgrade beyond Catris, Verdash and Anubis are both very good options, with Anubis having the highest Handiwork ability at tier 4, and Verdash having the second highest. Time to get into the electricity charging pals. Spartus and Jolthog are very commonly found early game electricity generating pals, but by the mid game you'll want to change over to Univolt or Rayhound to increase the speed of charging up your electricity. While late game, Orzhov can't be touched, charging electricity the fastest with its tier 4 electric charging ability, followed by Grizzbolt at the second best with its tier 3 charging ability. Much like the watering category, the electricity category is very short and definitive, so moving on to the another short section, medicine making ability. Floppy and Liftmonk can't be beat in the early game due to how common they are, but by the mid game you'll want to move on to either Bristla, Petelia, or Catris. Much like Handiwork or Gathering, you should try to use a pal to make your medicine when you need it, but otherwise it does something else as its primary thing. Late game, Bella Noir and Bella Noir Liberio can't be beat in terms of medicine crafting ability with the natural tier 4 ability, but because Lylene is again so important as part of the late game farming chain, we would recommend just relying on Lylene to be your medicine maker in between planting stuff and gathering it. Our last session will be the shortest though, talking about cooling pals. Your early to mid game options are pretty much the same. Pingullet, Pinking, Chillet, Jolthog Christ, or Fossickle, or really anything that uses a freezing and ice type. Higher tiers of cooling though will make the products last longer in between cooling checks. However, all of these are basically the same because they sleep at night. The best cooling pal is Van Warren Christ, hands down, due to the fact that it's the only cooling pal that is part dark, meaning that it will cool your fridge all day and all night as long as it's fed, versus any other cooling pet which will again only doing during the day. Unfortunately, ranching doesn't really have a best pal for it since all the pals give various things when you ranch them. So if you're looking for cloth, you'll want to ranch either a Lamble, Cremis, or Melpaca, while high quality cloth comes from ranching Sibilix. Cotton candy comes from Woollypop, and stick a Flame Bell into a ranch for fire organs, while Kelpsea will make pal fluids and a Dumund will make high quality pal oil. Chickapea produces eggs, Mazarina milk, Beeguard's honey, and Caperty berries. Lastly, Mal, Malchrist, and Vixie all produce various items like arrows, pal spheres, and gold coins when ranched. If you watched all the way to the end, we hope you enjoyed and learned something about which pals are the best for each work category. If you enjoyed this guide, why not let us know down in the comments, or disagree with something we said, why not let us know again down in the comments. Otherwise, if you enjoyed, why not subscribe for other future guides and content related to Pocket Pair's Palworld. Thanks for tuning in and have a good night.